computer, lights. Hey, everybody. It's me and Pepper. And Pepper, here's Pepper's. There we go.
And we're coming from my computer, too.
Like a real human being. You have a computer and everything.
I know.
I'm shocked.
I know.
So, Brent, we're swapping Wednesday for Friday because we were supposed to have Watercolor Wednesday. And you can see Pepper's got bedhead. I'm sitting here going, wait, this is Wednesday? And Colton was asleep. So nobody is ready for Watercolor Wednesday at all. So instead, we're going to do Friday's show today and then Watercolor Wednesday on Friday. And hope that nobody notices. Well, yeah, there's intro music because I ran the intro from on Restream, which usually hiccups and stalls and has all kinds of horrible stuff going for it, but today seemed to run just fine. So maybe that's what we need to be doing. I don't know.
I don't know. It was like that's the first time I've heard the jingle in a while. So I'm like,
right? It's kind of having a problem. Boom! It's a boom outside.
Well, thank you, Brent, for being ready for Watercolor Wednesday. I'm not going to disappoint. I did actually do one thing that I wanted to bring to the table today, and I will get to that when we're ready.
Oh, yes, good. That's good. Because like totally this week, I was going to say I have done nothing this week, but that's not true. Yesterday, I actually had a massive breakthrough. So it was really cool. I had a shoot yesterday morning. That's why I didn't have a show. And so I went and I got dust all over my monitor. I went to this house out in Brighton to take pictures for my client. And that's actually part of the reason why I'm really tired this morning is because I didn't get it done by 10 o'clock when bedtime was. So I ended up working until about 1:30 or 2 this morning to finish all the pictures, make them all look nice, and finish the video and everything like that. You am moving? That doesn't look good. You have a frowny face. Are you moving on your own terms, or is this somebody just told you get out? Because if so, that's not cool. So, I mean, is this the Nate has found you a home and now you're moving to the home? Because that would be cool. That's not a bad thing. So, anyway.
Stinks.
Yeah. So,
I just don't like packing all my stuff. I can share the sentiments.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Yeah.
We moved into this house and now I've really embedded in here and I really like it. And I like my house just the way it is. And now I wouldn't want to move. We will have to discuss this later. That does not bode well.
I understand those sentiments very well.
Yeah, I understand too, my friend. Probably understand way too well. So anyway, okay, so driving out to Brighton, because that's where this house is. This house is out in, not only is it in Brighton, but it's like in far east Brighton and like northeast Brighton. So it's out 76 forever.
So you're describing BFE.
Right. Or BFB in this case. You know, and so I'm driving out there and I start to think about like, man, I really got to think about my comics and what I'm doing. And I've been thinking about a sort of a fair weather change that I was going to do in my story that I've been wanting to do for a while, involving the idea that the ship computer is sentient and gets promotions and transfers and all of those things, just like every other military officer. Not you. And so I've been thinking about that, and I was like, that adds an entirely different character culture to my story. So I was sitting there thinking about that while driving, and all of a sudden I had this like thought of this scene between Chang and the old AI, which has now been promoted and is now moving on to a destroyer. And the old AI is, wakes Chang up and says, hey, I'm about to ship out. And Chang's like, no, I don't. What about our going away party? And the AI is like, we had that last night. You drank so much you forgot it, And so I was like, this is a great way to enter in, show that Chang's in not good shape, and not have to have the scene that I've been kind of fighting with, which was an entry scene where Chang was going to be like in a bar or something, which really didn't seem appropriate for a CO. And so it was kind of like, I mean, I was willing to kind of go there, but it just didn't seem to fit. And this fits a whole lot better. Well, yes, I'm going to have to obviously work on that sentient computer rule that I've got on my, because it is against, Brent's right. I have a set of rules that said that we couldn't have sentient computers. It's that specific rule is designed to cause a situation. So originally, Brent, when I took all of these are all old Tamerlan scripts that I had written a long time ago for my comic Tamerlan, and I have been redoing them all and de-Star Trekking them. One of the scripts involves someone who is making who is genetically modifying a person. And the whole crux of this is that in Star Trek's universe, genetic modification is illegal, absolutely illegal. And so the whole script was designed to explore that. This is why Khan Noonien Singh was, sort of addicted. And the whole story was designed around Captain Cochrane at that point in time having to deal with that. But I didn't want it to be blatantly obvious that the Unity has a law against genetic modification, just like the Federation. So I made it broader and included computers. But now I'm thinking, okay, the AI concept here is so radical and different and interesting that I think I'm going to just risk. It's better to risk just saying something similar to Star Trek, because that'll checkmate that script, but it'll also allow, and actually now there's a certain amount of, it gives a different depth to that particular script, because the person's like, well, I genetically modified this person. How is that different than you guys creating AIs? Now you've got Chang, who's going to be in this spot going, it is kind of a rough one. Now you mention it, so that gives some depth that I didn't have before. Yep, I agree. Khan's cool. I mean, there's a reason why all of us love Star Trek too. So anyway, 1, 2, 3. I've got 3 opening scenes now for the first comic already done. They're already written out. Everything's square. Hi, Bill's head in the background.
Bill, you're getting a hello because they saw your head.
Oh, hello.
Hello. But yeah, so anyway, I wrote the first 3 scenes yesterday in a maddening fit of writing. and just typed them out as fast as I could. So that's sort of a thing that was cool. So that was, I don't know. I mean, I'm very proud of that because I haven't really, I guess I should, what I was trying to kind of explain to my kid about this yesterday, because he's like, I don't get it. You've been writing on this story forever. And I'm like, yeah, but the characters weren't real. They didn't speak correctly. Like I wrote the script and it was easy. I didn't have to fight these scenes. I didn't have to sit there and ponder, what will he say now? What will she say now? It all just flowed right out of me, which means that the characters are jiving now, which is great. So the only problem I've got is it looks like issue 1 of my comic is pretty much going to be a whole bunch of people talking to each other. So I've got to come up with something else to go on in the story.
Well, I mean, if you're changing it to like an AI transfer, an Ascension AI transfer to another ship, I mean, that makes it a little bit more interesting, not just talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting discussion because the old AI and Captain Chang are obviously friends. The old AI has been promoted, which shows that there's a promotion line and, you know, stuff like that. The new AI is coming in now with Meirel. So both of them are coming in together. And there's some interesting interaction that goes on between all of these, you know, these characters now. The new AI is like this young guy. He looks like a teenager almost. He's very, very young, but he's part of this is that the new AI is like 3 years old. So he's straight out of the academy and just barely, I mean, you know, like Chang says he's a baby, right? You know,
the baby program,
right? We've got this baby coming aboard, you know, and the older AI, you know, that's one of the other things I really like to explore and the concepts that I like to explore there. You know, like what did the AI do before the AI joined the military? Well, I was the building control system for this daycare center. You know, it's like, oh, okay, that's what you did. You ran the air conditioning. Gotcha.
Yeah, Brent's making a very good point. You could actually cause a problem with the ship with the new AI being installed.
That's true. That could be the conflict too. Yeah.
So, just out of curiosity, so I have like mental images correctly. Like I'm picturing these like AIs as like floating televisions with arms you know, like the old style, like of cartoons when they saw a sentient computer or AIs where it was just a computer screen and it like then had like an embedded thing on the back where they installed themselves so they could move. Is it that, or do they have like a humanoid form?
They actually apparently take any form they want. Some choose to be human, some choose to be Jacine, but they're holograms because the holograms are omnipresent in this future. So you don't bring up a computer, you don't have a computer, you push the button here and your computer screen bloop, pulls up right there, not you. So holograms have always, I mean, as part of my future, that's what they've, and I actually kind of established this a little because the shuttlecraft lands on the in the shuttle bay, and the AI, which looks like a teenage guy, stands up and is like, thanks Meirel for being cool. Hey, can I ask a favor of you real quick? Pointing to the suitcase in the back seat. And she's like, what? And he's like, we're not allowed to have personal holograms on the shuttle bay deck. And so she has to go get his suitcase and carry his suitcase to the ship to illustrate that he's not corporeal on the shuttle bay deck. He's not allowed to be corporeal on the shuttle bay deck. But also she's not allowed to bring up her personal comm either, you know, on the shuttle bay deck. Nobody is. It's a safety issue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The only holograms are holograms that are telling ships to land and where to land and not run into each other. So as a safety issue, you can't run any holograms on a shuttle bay. So, so yeah, the AI from Halo. That's what I was thinking was the opening scene to me is it's pitch black and I could see this entire scene. And then you see the text in just bubbles on black, saying, Lee, wake up, Lee. It's time to get up. And then you just see the outline of Chang's face in blue. And she's like, I don't want to get up, Mom. And it's like, look, I'm shipping out. And she sits up and it's the hologram of the old AI is illuminating the room. So the room is pitch black except for her, who's sitting in a chair.
I'm just like picturing this older AI that has like a scar like right here going like across the face, and a couple of others, and it just looks like very grizzled and stuff like that. And I'm just like picturing it because like everything that you see is because like maybe cyber attacks and other types of things that just left like they wanted reminders of what they've been through. And I'm just like, okay. And then you have like this teenage kid coming aboard and he's probably like
fresh face.
Hi, how are you?
He looks just like awesome.
Doing well.
Right.
Like,
I can't keep my voice from cracking.
Like what?
Well, it's exactly what I was thinking too, is exactly that. Like the old AI is an older lady and she's, got wrinkles and she's got, and she looks like but you'll find out throughout the story that she's got a history. The older AI, she was, like I said, she was like the building control for a daycare for many years. That was her civilian job before she joined the military. And so she chose to join the military and then did. And then she became an AI for a little Corvette for a while and, met up with the guys in the Corvette and yada, 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 yada. But the idea I thought would be kind of cool is they're just one more race. Mm-hmm. Just another race in the system there. There's just a bunch of people running around. I'm glad Brent brought that up because I will have to change the Unity's constitution so that AIs can be built. Although there could also be, by that lockdown, AIs can make AIs, but nobody else can.
Well, I was actually kind of wondering, like, can they have children in this case?
Right? Because clearly we're getting new AIs being born, right? That clearly occurs. And I think that there should be a specific thing that AIs have, like they can't replace their memory chip or something like that, so that they have a death, however long it takes for their memory chip to fail, whatever that takes. And that might be about 150 years or 300 years or 1,000 years. But whatever it is, somewhere along the line, they fail and they're not allowed to replace it or back it up or anything like that because that's part of their mortality.
Not sorry for the Dune reference.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Brent, because now I don't feel so bad pulling it out of the Constitution because I made the same thing. That's essentially what the third article of the Constitution is.
Yeah, technically, what you're describing are holograms, so they're not exactly a machine. They're programmable. They're not programmable by your second mention, but like what you're talking about is essentially a ship part. Like
it's a suitcase
that is just installed.
Right, it's a suitcase,
and they just they go in and out of it.
Yeah, you take the suitcase, you plug it into the ship, and then once you plug it into the ship, then the AI takes over control of the vessel. Without it, the ship isn't very smart,
I mean, and you also open up to other scenes where basically you could actually have one of the ship's AIs die.
Yeah.
Right in front of like people and crew and stuff like that. Like,
oh yeah,
if something were to like damage the ship good enough to
well,
get.
if the ship takes a hit right at the AI box, you know,
yeah,
the AI box sits in the middle of engineering. If engineering explodes, you know, for whatever reason, the AI could be killed, you know.
yeah.
I think that there's a certain amount of intentional mortality that they would have built into this. You know what I mean? The more I think about this, the more I'm like, there'd be a certain amount of intentional mortality. Nobody backs up AIs. You don't back them up. That's just not a thing we do, you know, because there's an intentional mortality. You don't, and that actually might be an entire story in and of itself right there. You know, here's this AI that keeps backing himself up, you know, and it's like, well, no, wait a minute. You're not supposed to be doing that, you know? Well, yes, but who wants to die? Who wants to live forever, you know? Yet another interesting mortal and moral conflict that
could be the
go through.
Q AI.
That what?
That could be the Q AI.
Right? The Queen AI?
No, the
Q from Star Trek?
Yeah, John
I thought you were making a reference because I was singing Who Wants to Be Forever? Who Wants to Live Forever?
Well, no, what I was like thinking is like you have this character who's flamboyant, like Q.
Right.
And he is the one that is found that he's been backing himself up on another memory chip.
Right.
And for whatever reason, he realized his was starting to fail.
Right.
And basically, he's known for his theatrics. He's known for his flamboyance by the crew that he's always been with. And so basically, when they discover it, they try to stop him. And
there's an interesting other idea, though, because the chip that the brain of these AIs is mortal, right?
Yeah.
Which means that if he is moving and backing himself up into other chips, he's denying another AI's life.
Yes.
Which there's a thought.
Yeah.
That's an interesting twist to this. It's not just like he's backing himself up by saving himself to the cloud and he lives in Microsoft servers somewhere. He's denying another AI life. Oh, that's deep. That's really deep. I like that. I'm writing that down.
And so they do find they could actually have one of those chips found, and it's like it's been backed up, but essentially they find something strange with the programming. One of the chips basically altered it, and if the guy that's been backing himself up on this chip, the altered is basically he created his own child.
That and Brent's, yeah, that's exactly it. Brent's talking about exactly what I'm thinking too. Which he's right. That's what I was thinking, was only the AIs create the chip. So and they all came from the 12 or 13 AIs that existed before the Unity.
Yeah.
And that will prevent, that actually gives depth to that particular law now, because now it looks more like that law was put in place to prevent people from duplicating the race of AIs.
Or an AI duplicating oneself.
Right. Right. Because AIs can have children. That's their choice.
Yeah.
By Unity law, they can have children. So they can create the specialized chip.
Yeah.
But humans aren't allowed to make the specialized chip because that's against the Unity laws. And it was probably put into place because maybe there was an AI war. I mean, maybe that happened. You know, there were
could have also been part of the reason why humans are no longer on Earth.
Right. Well, no, that's big plot. big plot is important and
it
exists.
can contribute.
It can contribute.
It can
contribute.
Like the older AIs, like the 12 or 13 left over, were basically the ones that constructed the weapon that caused everything.
Right?
Because they didn't want to go out without a bang.
This is good. All right. I took the note about that. AIs that move the AI who wants to live forever. And now we'll have AI life form. So, Constitution law was made to protect AIs and AI war. That makes some sense. I like that. I like the fact that, because I've been trying to, it's been 500 years since the Titan War, and I just can't imagine that all of the humans in all of the everywhere and everybody just stayed peaceful since in those intervening 500 years. So I've been trying to think of what little conflicts have been coming up. So it's kind of, it's been fun to think about what's been happening in that 500-year zone, because part of this is we have one character that's jumping that gap. And so with that character jumping the gap, she's going to be clueless to all of this stuff and going to be asking, okay, wait a minute, how did you get here? You know, and that's going to be part of what she's going to want to know. You know, she's going to want to know all about that. She's going to want to know, how did they get here? What was occurring? So that character doesn't show up until the end. So anyway, that's the things that's what happened yesterday. Was all of this concept came in with the key piece being the AIs needing to exist. So we have solved the AIs, and we've solved how they work with the Congress or with the Constitution. So that's good. So yes, the AIs are definitely their own life form, and I'll put that down too. Only AIs can make AIs. Only AIs. I wonder if that would be an interesting, like, cultural thing. Like, the AIs move to the birthing zone. You know, all AIs move to the birthing zone when they feel like they want to have children. And the machines that make the AI chips are intentionally not controlled by like a computer or anything. So an AI must be plugged in to build the chip manually. And since that happens, there's like, you know, an entire culture around this while the AI constructs the new chip. And it even would be kind of cool if, you know, you have a rough blueprint of what an AI should be, but every AI sort of puts their own English on it, you know, their own spin. So each AI comes out just slightly different. And some AIs come out broken and they don't work. And that's like a burden on the parents, you know, because they'll screw it up. Oh, that's even deep.
Yeah, an entire planet. That's what I was thinking, Brent. It was like they actually have to travel to a planet specifically owned by AIs.
Right. That does not allow.
Doesn't allow you to create, like, that's why that character, like the one I was describing, like Q, that's why his case would be so, like, dramatic, because it would be like he's not even going to where you are allowed. He's doing it on his own, in probably in a space which no one, like, it's illegal.
Right. Well, that's the
And,
thing, right? He's you know, you have to use unobtainium to build these chips, right?
Yeah.
So you get unobtainium to build the chips, and so he has been stealing a chip from the construction world to build a duplicate of his chip, you know, and score a duplicate pattern on the chip. And in doing so, he's depriving somebody of that, you know, somebody of life effectively.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
this got seriously deep and all over the place, didn't it?
Yeah.
Might be more than one story here.
Well, also at the same time, I was thinking about it, like, you know, that old saying, like, you don't want to be a parent like your parents. You want to be better than your parents. You just don't, or you don't want to screw up your kid like your parents screwed up you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, type deal.
Well, like I said, that's another deep thought there.
Yeah.
Because the parent is literally scoring in the chip for their kid.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do it wrong, the kid is broken.
Well, yeah. I wouldn't consider the chip is the child is broken. I want to say
that's what I mean. I mean,
like
flawed
or anything like that. Like, I would just say the chip is, you know, it has a longer period before it can choose a job, right. Or it has a longer period.
I think that there would be. I think we could go all the directions.
Yeah,
because I know that there are a number of parents who have children who are seriously disabled.
Yeah.
My stepmom, for example, has cerebral palsy. And the cerebral palsy was she got cerebral palsy because the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck for just a few minutes during the birthing process. And she ended up on crutches and with braces and still walks with a walker and will always be that way. She will never run. She will never, you know, that never will occur to her, all because just a few minutes of, you know, of an umbilical. And I know that my grandma, somewhere in the back of her brain, itches that, is that my fault? You know what I mean? Somewhere in the back. So you literally could exemplify this fear coming from a parent. I mean, I felt it. What if my child was born with a debilitating disability?
Yeah.
And what if it was my genetics that caused it? Right?
Well, and that's the thing, is both me and Bill actually have have things in our genetics. Bill discovered that he has one of the he has, like, if we ended up doing surrogacy instead of adoption, we would have to basically make sure whoever we get as the egg donor doesn't have cystic fibrosis in her genetic line, because Bill carries one of the things,
one of those markers,
markers for cystic fibrosis.
Exactly.
And, you know, piggybacking on the cerebral palsy thing, I was born with the cord wrapped around my neck. Mm-hmm. And first couple of minutes of my life, I actually was blue, and there was no air flow into my body.
And it's amazing what a difference. I think it was only like 15 years. I think that my stepmom is 15 years older than you. Mm-hmm. Maybe 20 years older than you. What year were you born?
83.
Yeah, she's literally 20 years older than you. Yeah. Because she was born in 63. But what a difference 20 years makes. For her, it was enough. Hey, Donald, welcome to the show.
Hey, Donald.
Right. You don't have to stay. We'll be back tomorrow. But it's amazing what just 20 years will do, because what debilitated and damaged her brain didn't damage yours.
Well, okay. I want to just throw this out there. according to my family, yes, there was probably some type sort of brain damage done.
Right.
If you talk to my
I was
sister,
going to say, now your friends and family calling you brain damaged, that's a different story.
yeah, that's a little bit different. No, like basically I was ushered off and brought back.
Right.
It was one of those things. But they still weren't sure. Like when I was born, and I think that's probably why I was kind of getting a little bit deterred when you said broken, because like this has been my life. Like,
well, no, and I mean, I
because
mean that, and I'm serious about the idea of parents blaming themselves. I mean, that's something that can be explored and should be explored, because I think a lot of parents needlessly blame themselves for things that aren't their fault, but they will think that that's their fault. You know what I mean? It was just my genes. My entire family, my dad, myself, and now my child all have psoriasis. You know, these red spots you're seeing show up on my face. I've got it on my elbows, on my knees, and stuff like that. That's genetic. And now my kid has it, and I'm seeing him walk to school today. He was wearing shorts, and I saw all the red patches all along the back of his knees. And I'm like, just like the rest of us, he's going to get razzed for that. They're going to tease him for it. And I'm like, oh, I feel so bad. That's my fault. Well, that's not really my fault. You know, it's not like I told my genes, okay, you're going to go in there and cause this damage. Ha ha ha. You know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's why I'm saying, in a way, I like the idea that this is sort of a literal translation of that. It is a literal, you know, these parents are scoring chips. If the AI turns out to be a psychopath, they're going to sit there and go, was that because of something I scored? Was that something I wrote into that chip? You know what I mean?
And as Bill put it, bugs on the chip.
Right. Is that a bug I wrote into the system by accident? Because nobody wants to.
Right. You know? And I think it goes back to, like, if you ever hear people talk about their kids who are incarcerated for murder and stuff like that, like, you're kind of going into that direction.
But not just that.
I just know the main reason why, like, I think you want to stay away from the term broken, specifically because, like, you're talking to someone who basically has been told good majority of my childhood that there was something wrong with me all the time, mentally, because of what I went through when I was born.
Right.
And it does shape you in a different way. Like,
I completely agree. And as somebody who has ADD, which is technically a mental disability, you know, I mean, it is an issue to think about how we frame it.
Actually, disagree. You know? I say use the word.
Yes.
I disagree. I say use the phrase broken because it strikes an emotional chord and that will connect to the reader.
I think I'm going with Bill on this one because of that same reason. The reasoning is because when a parent has a child and the child does something like becomes a psychopath, you sit there and ponder, did I break them? You don't sit there and go, well, he has a little bit of a disadvantage. You don't soften it internally in your head. You literally think, did I break my child? And
then you can have incidences where the AI actually paired with another AI and they wrote the chip together.
That's an interesting idea too. Because then it's like, did I screw this up or did my wife screw this up?
Or you just basically, like, have someone
my partner, I guess. Did my partner screw this up?
Or you have one basically go, what did you do when you were writing?
Right. Because that's the other thing that happens. The kid goes broken, and I'm using the word to be impactful, goes broken, and one parent blames the other parent for breaking the child.
And one of the parents basically has that child with them all the time now.
Right. Exactly. the child goes to the other parent because the first parent can't stop seeing them as broken, as defective.
Yeah.
You know, and in all of the weight that you're talking about, with all of that heaviness that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because it's damaging the child. The child is then getting I'm broken, aren't I? I'm a broken chip. I don't work, you know. And they're, instead of trying to rise above, instead of, wow, there is a lot we can go into on this. This is really cool. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
It's deeper than I thought it was. This is a pretty deep well right here. Bringing AIs in as a physical being, I knew was going to be a different take, because everything I'm seeing in sci-fi right now, the AIs are these things. They're just boxes of machines that sit there and say, "Yes, Captain, I am doing the thing.
Yeah,
I did the thing," you know, and they might have bits of personality or whatever. But I don't see it being treated as an equal. I don't see the AIs being treated as another life form.
Well, I think the AIs could also have their own language too.
Mm-hmm.
Like
they can obviously communicate much faster than humans could.
So you could have all different types of personalities. You could have one that basically goes, "Okay, well, I'll dumb this down for you."
Right.
Like
it talks down to you all the time,
and
always looking down its nose.
Yeah, like basically every single time that you hear this person talk, it's like some form of like explaining. Yeah.
AIs are perfect in all sci-fis. That was the first thing I wanted to excise.
Yeah.
Was these AIs are not perfect. I establish it twice in these two scenes. The first scene, the older AI, whose name is Jen, by the way, Gen, Jen. Jen is like, you know, she's talking about Mayrel being a Deistati and said, you know, a lot of misfits work together to become a much better team. And Chang's like, you mean like you and me? And the AI is like, yep, like you and me. So implying that Jen's already a misfit somehow. You know, we don't know what she did, but she was clearly a misfit. Then the new AI comes aboard and keeps forgetting to say sir, because Mayrel is a rank up on him and he's an ensign. And so he keeps forgetting to say sir, and is horribly horrified that he forgets to say that. You know, he's making a mistake there. He's horribly nervous that he's going to screw everything up because he's young.
Yeah,
you know. We're already showing that they've got.
The ship is going to be the Misfits ship.
Oh, it's always that's actually intentional.
Yeah,
this is Black Sheep Squadron.
Yeah,
everybody who's a misfit ends up on the kitty wake, and that's the way it goes.
Apparently, Bill wants to say something.
I have a question. Are the AIs allowed to alter their own code? Because if they could, then what would be the point of creating?
Well, they rewrite in a natural way.
Yeah,
like we rewrite.
So it's kind of like when I was a kid, I was much horrible. Like I would not, when I was a kid, doing this on a weekly basis probably would not have worked for me.
But a programmer,
now it does as an adult.
As a programmer, it sounds like their code is hard set, it's hard coded, but their database of what they understand and can process grows as they age, which increases their sophistication over time. But the code that uses that database is unchanging. And so they take the time to modify that for their children so that they are better than they were.
My programming engineer.
Though that's I totally agree, except that I think that they have access to rewrite their main code. So you have the old adage, 99 bugs on the wall, right? You take one down, pass it around, 105 bugs on the wall.
Yeah.
You know, so every time they rewrite their code, they just introduce new bugs while they try to rewrite their code. So they're careful about rewriting their own code, And
Yeah.
B, it doesn't always create, they fix the one thing that they fixed, but then now they've got two psychoses that they didn't know that they had before.
So,
You know what I mean?
breeding for them wouldn't be necessary for improving themselves because they do that to themselves all the time. So breeding has some other motive.
Right. Well, it's like our brains are effectively computers. That's what they are. It just we just rewrite the code, and we have to be hard programmed the same way. I mean, you have to teach a baby how to walk. You have to teach them how to eat.
Well, I think that's all. I think we're hard coded, and that's just all data that we ingest. But the code, our DNA and such, that's unchanging.
Yeah, I'm sure there'd be a few things like we're hard coded to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
We breathe. However, I can hold my breath.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that in fact, I think we're one of two primates that can hold their breath, us and rhesus monkeys.
Mm-hmm.
No other primates can. NASA discovered, side note for all of you people, NASA discovered this, and this is the reason why we had to switch to astronauts, was because they kept drowning chimps. Because the chimps would land in the water and then the capsule would fill and then the chimps would drown because they can't hold their breath. And so that's why. So, but I mean, we have some that I think you're right would be hard coded. How to communicate the input output communication jacks would be hard coded. How to bring data in and take data out would be hard coded. Keeping your suitcase running would be hard coded, but language wouldn't be. I think that you'd have to teach the child language, how to summon a drone so that you can go from one building to the next building. That would have to be taught. So there's a certain amount of it that I think
the ability to absorb and understand the language is hard coded, but the language
you'd have to put it in the database. Yeah. So like what you were saying, I guess really what I'm saying is that my coding would be very small. It's really just how do you access the database and how do you communicate with the world? And that's hard coded. And that would be the same on every chip.
Mm-hmm.
But then the rest of that, the scribing that an AI would do to scribe the chip would be stuff you kind of want your kid to know. We eat with forks, not chopsticks, or we eat with chopsticks, not forks. Like things that would change by culture and evolve. You'd get different aspects of things. We only transmit data, in binary on the full moon. And all other times we transmit it in hexadecimal. And stuff like that. Like there would be like these weird cultural concepts, that would kind of have to be scribed in. And so,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Brent.
Thanks, Brent. Brent's taking pot shots at Bill. Not intentionally.
But while you guys were talking, like the first thing that like pops back into my head, like is the whole effects of and dynamics of possible sibling groupings. In this thing where you may have the new AI coming in, he's only like 3 years old, but is like a teenager type deal. But then later you have another AI come in, and the new AI that's going into the ship is super excited that you're going to have another AI boarded to accompany them to another place or something. And come to find out, like, it's its sibling, and the sibling actually wants nothing to do with it. Yeah,
I think Bill knows that Brent is kinderfolk.
Yeah, no,
they're both of the same.
No, he knows.
Branch of people.
But basically, you open it up to like basically have this storyline where, like everyone's like excited for this to happen, and then the sibling gets there and is like, "Oh, you're the imperfect
Mom
thought
might
it
be
was-
best.
And like you find out like there's 5 in the sibling group, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you're the village idiot.
Well,
You
and that's the other thing that's kind of fascinating about this is what if you had like, this specialized AI is coming aboard, and the specialized AI is like a spy, a super spy, and it turns out to be the brother, and you're like, well, all you ever did was just run a little Corvette. I've done all kinds of stuff, I've infiltrated computer systems. I've been involved in like 5 war breaches through the data network. What have you done? I ran this Corvette.
Well,
like you could almost have that kind of conflict too.
Yeah, it does. It just presents it like as like it's like kind of like, well, due to your imperfections, I guess you can't really do much outside of this now, can you?
Right?
You're
like broken. I mean, Mom didn't write the code as well for you as she did for me.
You could also call them parental units, by the way.
Yeah, I actually, there's a whole page on family units in my world building because it seems ridiculous that I think that if you pared the humans down to 65,000 humans and that was all that was left, and that's what we had to rebuild from, I think a lot of cultural stuff would just get kicked right out, and especially in the modern era. Because if you have like all of us, if we were part of that 65,000, they say, okay, well, we're gonna set up the family unit to be mom and dad. Then we'd be like, well, a lot of us know that there are sometimes dad and dad, and sometimes mom and mom, and sometimes you end up with dad, mom, and Uncle Jim, who just helps raise kids because he's got nothing better to do, and and so I set up sort of the system is like, you know what, we're not messing with this. There's just the primary parent and then all secondary parents, and that way we know who to call if they break their leg. And then we just go down the line.
Well, like I said, parental units. So basically, if you use the term parental unit, it kind of encompasses whatever grouping of parental figures that the AI will have. So
although parental unit does sound kind of, I don't know.
It's something from the base programming from the originals that they just left in there.
Oh no, I'm talking about the culture, all Unity culture.
Yeah.
So
it would be specific to the AIs only.
The AIs, they would all just have the same structure. I don't want to, I think when it comes to cultural interface, you almost want to leave the AIs operating in the same culture so that they don't delineate. They create kids and they all eat with chopsticks, even though AIs don't eat. But you learn to eat with chopsticks because you live in a culture where people eat. And so, you know what I mean? It's, it's like, so there's like interface things where when you interface with a culture, so they're going to follow, the AIs will follow Unity traditions on parents. So if you happen to have 3 parents scribe your disk, it still would have 1 primary parent and 2 secondary parents, so that if the disk gets hurt somewhere, they call the primary parent. It's still the same thing as if it was a human. So, a human would have 2 parents or 3 parents or whatever, and you'd have the primary. So I would set Bill for the primary parent just to annoy you.
You can gladly do that, because in this case, if I was a secondary parent, I'd be the fun one.
Right? Exactly. But Bill's also the Trekkie.
Yeah.
I know what Bill's going to be teaching your kid, man.
Yeah.
I'm curious, with these AIs, since their children vary in levels of perfection, if you will, do they benchmark their children, and are all AIs eventually scored, and thus there's this kind of undertone of a class system to the AI community?
That would be basically developing of the AI's social structures.
Yeah, I actually think you're right. Well, and you can kind of see it in human structure.
Yeah.
I mean, would you in an AI society take AI is unsuitable to do a certain task? Would they have a more hard limit than we and humans do? Would they
might.
Maybe you could do it if you just try really hard, but AI is a benchmark. You know they can't do the job.
Well, and not only that, think about the next level on that one. Bill, the AI, is extremely good at scribing chips, whereas Pepper, the AI, is really lousy at it. So now Pepper wants to have a kid, but Bill doesn't. But now the society is giving Bill pressure to make kids and not Pepper.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting twist to that too, because society has found out that Pepper sucks at scribing. So in a way, it becomes.
Thanks for picking on me.
I know, man. You are totally my. But I mean, but it is an interesting concept to think about this, because now you've got like this effectively, eugenics going on in AIs. It's AI eugenics.
Yeah.
Because they're going to encourage Bill to scribe, but not you. And there's another deep thought. That's another interesting one.
It would be
my deep thought. I go back to work.
No, I love these thoughts, man. Keep adding them.
Well, it would be kind of like if me and Bill were both AIs. Like, I just want to point out, I can draw a straight line.
Right.
My
Right.
husband can.
Well,
he can program.
I assume
So what I'm thinking is like, I may not be able to program, but if we're working together, like if they view me as like someone that shouldn't like do it, that's fine. But I could sit there and draw the lines and everything. That's the physicality of the disc or whatever. And the programming part could be handled by someone else, like doing the coding part.
Right. In Beautifully World, there's wonderful fractals in the patterns where bills are all like absolute 90 degrees and industrial.
Yeah, and basically like and what it would turn out to be, like, say you had two parents like both me and Bill were the new ship's AI's parental units. And basically we just were tired the day that we made his.
Well, and there's another thought, right? You have like a world where the partners that are involved, they either cooperate to scribe the disc or they don't. And when they don't cooperate, you end up with a much more chaotic disc.
Yeah.
You cooperate, you can end up with a much better. So you kind of are encouraged there to find a move that works with you, which makes some logical sense as well.
Yeah. Like I said, like two parental units could have 5 kids, 5 children essentially. And by the time they got to the 5th one, they could have just been really just tired and screwed some things up.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. You just said something very important. The skills between you and Bill is very different. The same thing goes for my wife and me. We've got very different skill sets. And I think what you'd end up with is it's never going to be a perfect design. There is no such thing. There's not enough, maybe there's just enough room on the chip to put everything on there. So you have to decide, is this kid going to be more artistic or is this kid going to be more scientific? Is this kid, I mean, there's no way you can make it perfect at science and perfect at art. There's no way. So no matter what happens, simply don't have enough room on the chip to do all the things you want to do. And maybe that's intentional and by design. Maybe there were super AIs at one point in time. That's just a physicality function of the object.
Did I lose you? You're frozen. You've been frozen for a while. Do, 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 do. Phenomenal. Do, do. Yeah, I think he froze too. Damn, whoa! Oh, he changed. But now he's frozen again. Oh. He looks very scared at this point. Whoa, it's kind of freaky. Did Guy get body snatched? Do, 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 do. Phenomena. I am sorry, Brent. I can read this, yes. We will be reloading. Okay. Oh, wait. Was I supposed to reload the... Oh, well, I don't know yet. So, anyway. Yeah, I guess it's a Pepper show today. This is very awkward. I'm on Guy's channel, and I think we're waiting for Guy to come back. I don't have control over the video, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on. But I made paint. Well, it's not black. I'll show you. It's blue. Hold on. Getting a message, most likely from Guy. Okay. Yeah. So I got commissioned to do a paint, make a custom paint that is called Mayan Blue. Most of the Mayan pigments have been pretty much like are gone now. But I found one person who's still making, or at least finding, a way to make. Sorry, I'm getting messages from Guy. Just to let you know, he's trying to get his page reloaded. The Mayan pigment is one of those pigments. It's like very old. It was found where Mayans were found, obviously. But this blue is very nice. It's a little bit darker than, say, an indigo, or it's just different. It's not the same thing. It is a pigment that I had to add a good portion of honey to, and I know that I said my paints won't be having honey any longer in them, but for this one I had to do one with honey because the pigment itself needs it. It doesn't work out with corn syrup as well, so I just made that. Let's see. I only have one more page to do for a 6-page comic. Okay. Guy is still talking to me. So just bear with me real quick. Yeah. His internet's not down. Just something happened, and we're waiting for him to come back. I'm gonna let him know that we're still here. And anything that we want to say? Okay, we are waiting for your return. Aha! Should have said we should wait until he walks on water. But that's weird. I don't think I should say that to people. But I already did. Now it's on the internet. Can't take it back. Yeah, we really need guide for these. I'm very awkward.